Hi, you're listening to an episode of Watson's Right podcast. Be sure and like, share, and comment once you finish the episode. Thanks. Welcome to an episode of Watson's Right. I'm your host. I'm Watson, and I'm going to tell you why I'm right. Now, we might as well just go ahead and hit it off from the beginning, and that is to address the January the 6th protest or rally for President Trump in Washington, D.C. Now, for those who I'm sure if you're listening, you already know, but the rally was held with thousands of Trump supporters, and unfortunately, it took a embarrassing turn, and people stormed the Capitol. Um, Pretty point blank, it was embarrassing. It was a riot. It was un-American. Um, I don't care how pissed off you may be with the politicians that may be. But the fact that, you bam rushed the Capitol building and pretty much terrorized our elected officials is wrong. So if you are listening to this podcast to hear me sympathize with them, you are listening to the wrong one. Okay. I full heartedly denounce what happened on January the 6th. Wholeheartedly denounce that. It was an act of terror, domestic terrorism. No different than, my beliefs on Antifa and how Antifa has terrorized our streets for a year. So, if you're looking for something other than that, then you might want to turn this podcast off, and I hope you listen to the next one. If, if you want to hear what I really believe and what I think what led up to this and who's at fault for this, okay, then stay tuned because that's what we're going to discuss on this podcast of Watson's Right. But overall, it was a dark day in America. It was a sad day in America. It was a sad day for the America First movement. It was a sad way to end the Trump presidency, period. Anybody who tries to tell you that what happened Wednesday was American, someone that you may need to reconsider having part of your life, honestly. Because, it's not American to terrorize people. It's not American to make people feel threatened. It's not American to damage and um, you know, disintegrate or spit on government buildings that represent everything that this country stands for. Okay, that's not American. Leading up to that, that was American. Rallying together for a cause, that's American. Standing up for what you believe in, that's American. But as soon as you pushed your way into the Capitol building and the representatives and the senators and people had to, vacate and treat it as a terrorist attack, that's when it became un-American. When you're terrorizing and you're destroying government property, that's when it became un-American. When you're at the speaker's chair and you're acting like a fool, you're hanging off the balcony, you think it's cute because you're sitting there in Nancy Pelosi's office with your feet on her desk, that's un-American. That's embarrassing. And frankly, I really hope that the book is thrown at you. I hope that whoever rushed that Capitol, I hope you pay for what you did. I'm not just going to sit here and put that part of anything that I believe in because it's actually against everything that I believe in. One thing that has transpired since the riots on Wednesday is the complete hypocrisy of really both sides. You know, we as conservatives or as America First or, you know, whatever people on the right, we whined and fussed and cried out about the summer. Okay, we fussed and we said that, you know, something should be done to these people who are terrorizing these cities, who people can't go out to eat without being met with hostile environments, you know, tearing down statues to, you know, trying to burn government buildings, to spray painting walls, to autonomy zones, you know, so forth and so on. We completely yelled law and order and, you know, denounced these people, rightfully so. And now, for some reason, a chunk of our base feels like now, because it was our side and we felt the emotions and we feel like we were robbed, we somehow feel like it's okay. Like now it was justified. I disagree. You're no different than Antifa who's terrorizing Portland. You're no different than them. And it disgusts me that you are associated with the movement that I believe in. It disgusts me that you are what's being blasted over TV when there's some really good people in our movement that are really trying to better Americans, and you are what's being blasted on TV so you can be associated with an America First agenda. That disgusts me. And you know, the ramifications of what you did, you know, not only will hopefully you feel it personally, but a whole movement's going to feel what you did. A whole movement is going to feel what you decided to put on this country. We're going to have to pay for that. And I mean that just really pisses me off. It really ticks me off. It was an embarrassment that day to know that I was associated with people that was acting like that. And I don't know, nobody in that group. I don't know nobody that went to January. I mean, went to the march in January 6th. But the fact that people know me and know that I support the America First agenda, basically, you know, they basically assume that I was part of that or that represents what I stand for. I've had to defend my beliefs more in these last 3 days than I've almost ever had to have. Because you look like a bunch of redneck hillbillies running in the Capitol. It's like Mama finally let us go to the city and we didn't know how to act. That's what it looked like. It was embarrassing. And like I said, if you're someone who's listening to this and you support that, then maybe I'm not the person for you. Maybe my definition of America First is a different definition than you want. So maybe you need to hit pause, and I'm okay with that. Maybe you need to hit stop, unsubscribe, and I'm okay with that. Because that's some third world country shit. And that's stuff that I'm against. And that's stuff that I have been fussing and advocating to stop around the country. It does not make it right that now that my side decided to act like fools. So now that my rant basically is over it, and I want to make sure that I got my point across that what happened Wednesday is not something that I support at all. Now we'll go into more of a detailed version of what happened, what I think happened, and who's the cause of what happened. Now, who's to blame? Who's to blame? You know, that's what we're seeing, you know, all over the news right now is who's to blame. Now, I'm going to give you my opinion of who's to blame, and like I said, the podcast is called Watson's Right. So I believe I'm right about it. Um, but I'm going to be real with honestly how I feel about why this happened, what you know, who are the people and the organizations that caused this to happen. So some of you might not like what I'm about to say, and I'm okay with that. But one thing that I always said I was going to do when I started this podcast was that I was going to be honest and I was going to say exactly how I feel about situations and policies and so forth. And I'm going to do the same now. So, who's at fault? Well, we can start with the obvious one that, the media is blaming, the whole every day, all day, President Trump. President Trump has, some blame in this. I'm not going to be as radical as the media and say that it's 100% his fault. But, when it comes to a movement or when it comes to um, a popularity, you take ownership of the way you direct, the tone you set, um, and so forth. So, President Trump has got to take some ownership for what happened. Now, I listened to a speech that day. I didn't listen to it at the time it happened, but I listened to it after it happened. And personally, my personal opinion, that was not a inflammatory speech like they're trying to make it out to be. He did say, let's go to the Capitol, but, he also said, let's go peacefully. Let's be loud. Let's let them know that we're here. Let's let them know that we disagree. So, do I think he set out to storm the Capitol? No. No, I don't. Instead, I think his fault is the continuation of building up this heat, this boiler that finally boiled over. This continuation of rhetoric after rhetoric of me versus them, us versus them. The rhetoric of they're out to get you, the rhetoric of they stole this election, the rhetoric of we won and you got to stop them, and that I blame him for that. I blame him for that. And the reason I blame him for that is because he has still lacked evidence of the steal. I mean, he allowed, in my opinion, people to take over this, this argument of the steal that came up with some pretty radical beliefs, conspiracy theories, because there's been no proof. And he allowed that to take over. And I believe it started with Sidney Powell. Sidney Powell and her Dominion stuff about flipping votes, but yet there's still no proof of that it had a national effect. Her belief in her and Lynn Woods, and all this stuff about John Roberts and pedophilia, pedophile, basically. And, it just got too far to where people, we know that we're in a political divide and it just eventually boiled over. And so, yeah, he gets some blame on that. He let people jump in his legal fight that turned it into a conspiracy theory. And I don't care. I'm going to say conspiracy theory until someone proves something different. I believe Trump had a legit argument when it concerned the legal battle of this election. I believe he had a legit legal argument when it concerned the voting rules being changed in basically the middle of an election without the state legislators' consent. state legislators set the election laws. And the Democrats went around that basically, and the governors, and set rules with judges and so forth, and changed the laws. And the Democrats were able to exploit them laws, I guess, when it concerns mail-in ballots. So I do think he had a legit argument, a legal argument to fight this election. But he let the crazies get involved and completely turned this into a circus, basically. And then his response to it was laughable. His response of go home, you're special people, you know, that was nonsense. That was embarrassing. So yeah, I do put blame on President Trump for what happened. It was his movement, his rally, his, people. And when you're the head of a movement, you take responsibility for how that movement conducts itself. Now, it's not just him. Of course, the obvious is to blame the people. They deserve as much blame, and I hope the law is put onto them as much as possible. I really do. But I blame the media for what happened. I blame the media because the media is, I still believe, a huge problem in this country. The bias and the double standard that the media portrays is bullshit. And we as American people at some point have got to hold the media accountable for what they're doing to this country. They are creating race wars that are not existent. They are creating a divide of me versus you. They are creating a hostile environment, and everybody's just sitting back and letting it happen. When the media continues to ignore what happened all summer long with riots, not talking about the protests, because again, you have a right to do that. But when the media continues to ignore cities on fire, and they try to paint a picture of it's peaceful, but behind them is burning buildings. And now they want to call out, the what happened in January, rightfully so, but now they want to call it out. But whenever you create this stigma of the only way that you're going to get what you want, and this is the correct way to get what you want, you can disobey COVID guidelines. You can disobey the law. You can disobey, because you're mad, and you can burn stuff up because it's in a good cause. And we're not going to call you out for it. And the other people are racist and bigots and homophobic and everything else if they say anything about what's happening. Then yes, some people in their head are going to get in their head that the only way we can fight back is if we have to tear shit up. The media is going to continue to divide us, and the media is going to continue to act like this side does burning and this side tears up stuff. But the one who tears up stuff is the terrible one, but the burning's okay. Then yes, we're setting a standard of if you don't get your way, then you burn shit up. Now the media will never be held accountable because people just continue to let them. I don't know why. I don't know why. It really frustrates me, the fact that the media continues to get by with dividing us, and then but yet they keep their job. They keep their job. They can get on TV and they can talk and they can down half the country and they keep their job. But yet, someone on the right backs something that the right does, and they want their job, taken away or whatever. It's It's hypocrisy at its finest. The media played just as big a role in it as Trump did. The media played just as big a role in it as Trump did, and we've got to hold them to a standard at some point, guys. At some point, the media's got to be held. They ignored cities on fire. They ignored Washington, D.C. on fire. This very place that they're acting like 9/11 happened. This same place where the mayor, would not let the police do anything. This same place where after the Trump RNC acceptance party at the White House and people and Rand Paul and so forth were beat up, hit with skateboards, burnt the city up, almost tore down the fencing next to the White House. That was okay. But what happened Wednesday was not okay. Both of them were a problem. Both of them should not be accepted. Both of them should be in trouble. But the media acts like one didn't happen. So, yeah, they played a role in what happened Wednesday. The bullying that they do to the right, the lies that they spread on the right, the belittling, the condescending, the everyday attacks on people that support Trump or people that support the America First movement, the constant beating up that the right has to deal with because of the media and the media personalities. I mean, I believe that event that played a role and they eventually broke. The fact that Jimmy Kimmel can make jokes the night before talking about, basically hoping that COVID that's going to be a super spreader and that, whatever, because it's a Trump rally. Let someone say that about a Antifa movement. It's a problem. The fact that Joy Behar can tell everybody, that Trump people are racist and bigots and every day, they played a role in what happened Wednesday, and we got to hold them accountable. We got to make them pay for that. And by pay for that, I mean cut them off. Stop supporting them. GOP, like I've said in the old podcast, have got to stop going on this TV show. Stop giving them a rating and continuing with the medium. Really and truly, if the media would have just looked into, did their job, it's their job. I know people act like it's not, but it's their job to investigate. The media would have just looked into the irregularities that happened in this past election. None of this would have happened. The media did plenty of investigation on Russia after 16. The media covered that all day long because they felt like Russia played a role. A lot of people did. It was investigated. It was looked at. But when the right fell away, whether they had proof or not, a poll came out after the Georgia Senate election that said 70-something% of GOP voters felt like the election was stolen. That's a problem. If the media was fair, like they say, they would have looked into seeing what happened. If there was irregularities, if there was cheating, if there was, they would have been able to prove it because they would have dug like, like they're supposed to. We never would have found out about Watergate if it wasn't for the media. But that media is dead. And sometimes the fact that, when you're told to, vote for me and sit down and shut up, you know, it eventually, boils over, and that's what it did. We have to sit there for 4 years and listen to our president is not legitimate. He's a Russian pawn. He's a Kremlin. But yet, when some irregularities are shown and we're told to shut up and accept the results, that's not fair. That's not fair. The Republican Party is just as to blame as the media and Trump. The Republican Party, like I said in previous podcasts, dislike the Trump voter just as much as the Democrats do. And I believe that has shown wide open since the election defeat in November. The GOP is ready to move on from Trump. They're ready to move on from the working class vote. They're ready to move on from the America First agenda. And so the very party that the Trump people put into office would not even back the Trump people on the allegations of the irregularities that happened in the 2020 election. Okay. And, people can dispute the irregularities, and that's okay. But to be told to vote for me, but shut up, to vote for me, and I'm not going to do what you want, to vote for me, but your concerns don't matter. It's almost like eventually these people were put in a corner, and we wonder why they responded when they were put in. They feel like when they feel, I'm going to say feel because, they wasn't put in a corner, but when they feel like they were put in a corner, they had to box their way out. But their own party was not even backing them up. Their own party was not even demanding investigations. Their own party wasn't even saying that something was weird. I mean, do we remember any Democrat stepping away from the Russia collusion? I don't. They stuck together. They backed their voters. Their voters believed there was an issue, and the Democrats backed it up for 4 years. The Republicans, on the other hand, threw their voters out into the water. They didn't listen. They don't care. Majority of the Republican Party does not like the voters, especially the establishment. Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, John Thune, Lisa Murkowski, Suzanne Collins, Rob Johnson, Governor Kemp. They don't give a flying shit about the Trump voter. They wanted the Trump voter to shut up, fall back in line, give us our votes, and move on. So the GOP is to blame for what happened Wednesday. They're not going to take blame, but they're there to blame. And then, of course, we have the Democrats. Now, that's one issue that you'll never hear people say is to blame, because the Democrats are supposedly the ones that were being attacked. But, they're to blame too. They have played just as much role in this environment that we have in politics as Trump has, as the media has, as the GOP establishment has. The Democrat establishment and the Democrat Party has played the role too. Let's look back on 4 years. We've had 4 years of delegitimizing a duly elected president. The day after the election, they were calling for impeachment. We're boycotting his inauguration. We're objecting to his certification. We're pushing a hoax that never happened. We're openly supporting Trump people being sent out of restaurants. People forget that. People forget Maxine Waters talking about when they come, you tell them to go, you make them go, you push them out, you tell them you're not welcome here. I mean, we have Nancy Pelosi saying that she don't understand why the country's not up in arms. We have our vice president-elect going in, bailing rioters out of jail. We have other political people, pushing for people to show out, basically. So you're telling me all of that didn't help create this environment that we have right now? I mean, Jerry Nadler says he don't even think Antifa's real. Nadler, we don't think your neck's real, man. We're still waiting to see it. So, like that nonsense that they have played for 4 years is no different than the nonsense that Trump has played for 4 years. However, the difference is, well, when it concerns me, I can look back on it and see where I maybe personally played a role in our politics environment. Not a big role, but I went in with it. You know what I mean? Like I engaged in it. I we retweeted it. I shared it. I laughed at it. But to act like nobody else did, well, that's embarrassing. That's just a lie. It's just a lie. And the really sad part is that even after what happened, we're still seeing it. President-elect Joe Biden made a speech, and what was his speech? Well, he's using words like thugs and Nazi, and, is that uniting? Is that making things better, Joe? It's not. No different than when Trump does it. No different when that happens. It's time people wake up and realize that we all played a role in what happened Wednesday. We all played a role in it, whether it was by us retweeting, whether it was by us sharing, whether it was by us ignoring, whatever the case may be, we played a role in it. It's not okay that we played a role in it, but it's okay to acknowledge it. But to sit there and act like it was just one person or one party or one side or one movement or one whatever, we're not fixing the problem that way. That's why I wanted to do this podcast and, tell everything that I believe happened and why I believe it happened. And I believe that it happened because us as a society, us as a country have enabled the us versus them mentality, the us versus them politics. And then we are shocked when one side or the other has finally had enough and they feel like they have to fight back. I believe that you can even connect this, back to the rioting of the Obama years, when Black Lives Matter first originated, and over police brutality. And why were they doing that? Well, they didn't feel like they were being heard. And clearly they still don't feel like they're being heard because they're still doing it, or not. I'm not saying that like they're still burning stuff down, but they're still feeling the need to protest. And everybody's ignoring this one group. Antifa that continues to wreak terror on our streets. And, for some reason they're overlooked. The media ignores them. The media praises whenever they destruct stuff or act like it didn't happen, but then the media is shocked when another group decides, oh, well, if they want to do it, then we got to do it. At some point, we have got to wake up as a nation, and we've got to realize that we can disagree. We can have different ideas. But that does not mean that we are in this alone. And both sides have allowed it to get to that point. Both sides have allowed it to get to where, when you shut one down, you radicalize them more. When you shut one down, you radicalize them more. You don't shut them up. You just make them go somewhere else. And eventually they're going to come back. And it's not going to be what you want it to be then. It's going to be too late. That was Wednesday. It was too late. Wednesday was too late. The riot was too far gone. We have shut them up. We have pushed them in the corner. We have told them to believe they're crazy, they're racist, they're psycho, they're homophobic. We pushed them in a corner and they came out. And that's what we got Wednesday. Same thing with Black Lives Matter. We pushed them in a corner for years. No, we ain't locking your people up. No, it's not disproportionately blacks. No, the statistics say that white people are killed more than black people by cops. Shut up. Go back home. You're crazy. And then eventually they got sick of it because they got tired of seeing people die. They got tired of being told to pay attention to black on black crime. They got tired of feeling like they can't trust the people who protect them and that the people who they elect continue to ignore them. So what did they do? They put their shit up in arms and they made us pay attention. The difference between the two, though, is the media. The media backed one up, the media shuts the other down. And at some point, we've got to stop the it's me versus you. Your worries don't matter. If we disagree, you're a racist. If we disagree, you're homophobic. If we disagree, you're anti-Semitic. If we disagree, you're anti-American. If we disagree, you're the deep state. It is getting ridiculous. It is getting ridiculous. And it's an embarrassment to a country that I love, a country that I believe is the light on the hill that every other country should want to be like. But would you want to be like this country this year? We put our faith in these politicians, and these politicians continue to let us down, and we continue to vote for them anyway because they scare us of the other option. They scare us of the other option. So we don't even listen to them. We don't even give them a chance. We don't even give them nothing because we let them play the propaganda on us. And then we vote and they continue to do the same thing. And it's just got to stop. So what's going to be the ramifications of what happened in January the 6th? Well, I promise you it's going to be a lot harder than what happened over the summer. I promise you it's going to be a lot harder than what will ever happen to the Antifa group. Antifa is still terrorizing Portland, still damaging property, still creating autonomy zones, it's going to be, it's going to be worse than that. But I know this is a little off topic, but even that, even talking about the summer and Antifa and so forth, you could throw that on Trump almost, because that's his America. Why didn't he do something? Why didn't he punish them? Why didn't he send in the National Guard? Why didn't he, he's the president of the United States, and he let these people terrorize cities. He let his own city of Washington, D.C. burn to the ground almost and do nothing. He watched Minneapolis burn to the ground. Why did he do that? And I can almost remember being okay with his thing. Well, let the Democrats do it. It's the Democrats. It's the Democrats. It's Democrats. That's us versus them. Us versus them. Maybe if Trump would have set the precedent then that this was not going to be tolerated, then maybe Wednesday never would have happened. But anyway, I didn't think to mention that when I was fussing about Trump. But the ramifications of this, though, it's going to be hard on the right. It's going to be hard. I mean, you can already look at it. You have Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer talking about impeaching the president or wanting the 25th Amendment to be invoked. Personally, I think it's a terrible idea. It does not show unity. It's like pulling the right and raking them over the coals. It's like spitting in their face. It's like kicking them while they're down. Terrible plan. But they're wanting that. Supposedly they might vote on impeachment next Wednesday. That shows, in my opinion, they're not wanting unity. They're not wanting unity. They won this election, so they feel like that strategy worked. But I will say this, Trump won in 2016 with that strategy, and it's been downhill since. So, have fun with that. But you see Trump got permanently deleted off of Twitter. I personally, again, I think it's a terrible move. I think it's slippery slope. I get that Twitter is a private company and they have every right to do it, but I think it's a violation of your First Amendment right of freedom of speech. And Twitter does not mind the China Communist Party tweeting. They do not mind Iran tweeting. They do not mind Antifa tweeting about rallying their troops and so forth. And but yet we silence the current president of the United States. I think that is a problem. Not only are we silencing him, but we're silencing a lot of conservative people on Twitter. You have Apple and Google. The opposite of Twitter is something they call Parler or something, and Google's already taken that app off their store until they follow the rules that they want. Apple's threatening to do it. That's a slippery slope. I would hope that the left and the right can agree that this is getting out of hand, and it's only been a couple of days. You cannot do that. I'm a firm believer in freedom of speech. I believe freedom of speech covers hate speech. I do. If you want to classify what Trump said or what Trump does or whatever as hate speech, I believe it's protected in the First Amendment. I just, but if we're going to be a private enterprise and we're going to block the president because we say that he's pushing for violence, okay, well then let's go after Antifa. Let's go after the CCP. Let's go after Iran. Why does Iran get to tweet death to America? Why does the CCP get to brag about, their human right violations? That I don't agree with that. I also just think it's a slippery slope of slowly pulling away rights. I would wish that the Democrats would agree, but they're not going to because it's part of their party. But if they really wanted to show unity, if they really wanted to show that we're going to move forward, they would fight for the right of people being able to be on Twitter. Something simple as Twitter. But they're not. They're wanting impeachment. Josh Hawley from Missouri, lost his book deal over him objecting to the certification of the Electoral College because of what happened. Again, I think that's wrong. There's a difference in what happened and objecting to the Electoral College. Huge difference. Josh Hawley did not incite violence one bit. Josh Hawley seen irregulations and felt like the people deserved an investigation because the media wasn't doing it. Ted Cruz, the same thing. Fun fact for everybody, the last three Republican presidents and George W. Well, not the last three Republican, but the last three Republican elections that we won for president, which was George W. Bush in 2000, George W. Bush in 2004, and President Donald Trump in 2016. All three of them, the Democrats objected to. All three. That's their right. That's their right to object and lay out whatever evidence they have or what the reason they have it. And that's what Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, so forth were doing. But Josh is being punished by, his book deal. AOC's wanting Ted Cruz and Josh to resign. They're being called treasonous, and it's ridiculous. If you cannot separate the two, if you cannot separate challenging the Electoral College and what happened, then you are a complete fool. Then you need to look in the mirror and figure out that you're part of the problem because you're an idiot. You're an idiot. But it's gonna be a little bit of a dark day for the GOP, for the right, for the America First movement, especially. It's gonna be some dark days. We're gonna be ridiculed. It's gonna be hard, but we're gonna see who really believes in the America First movement. We're gonna see who really stands with us, and who's not. Prime example was Kelly Loeffler from Georgia, campaigned that she was going to object to the Electoral College, but then she voted no to not object because of what happened. Give me a break, Kelly. Again, two separate things. Two separate things. Kelly wasn't never a America First person. That's why she lost. She wasn't never an America First. She just wanted the vote. That's why she's out. But it's gonna be some dark days, and we just gotta battle through it. And we got to be the party. We got to be the movement that sets the tone because nobody else is. We took a hit. Them dumbasses knocked us back, but we can come back. We can either fight for what we believe in, or we can cower down and go away like they're wanting. But see, putting our country first is not a problem. And it should never be. You should never feel like it is. But until we acknowledge the role we played in it, the role the media played in it, the role the left played in it, we're not getting nowhere. Now I'm working on a podcast of where we go next, what do we do next, so forth, like that. Look for that. Look for my analysis of the Georgia election of what I think happened. This podcast is basically just a bitch fest. Okay, it's just a bitch fest. But so I'm working on 2 podcasts, like I said, about where we go next with the America First movement, the election result from Georgia, and another one. Now that Trump's lost and conceded, what do we make of the Trump presidency? We're going to dive into the presidency of the first years of President Trump, what went right, what went wrong, and how we can build and learn from what the Trump administration gave us. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you agree. I would love to hear your comments on the issue that happened. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Tough subject for everybody. But take these moments to look in the mirror and figure out what role you play. How can you do better? How can we do better? And how can we present our ideas to take the lead in where we're at right now? We can build from this. We can learn from this, and we can grow, and we can build, and we can win. We're not going to do that by cowering down, abandoning our message, or endorsing what happened. So I'm Watson. I'm right. Thank you for listening.